At over 200 feet below sea level, the Salton Sea appears like a mirage in the Imperial Valley region of Southern California. In a place described as desolate and inhospitable, with summertime temperatures of over 120 degrees, there is a transcontinental main line that runs through what is said to be America's basement. This is Union Pacific's Yuma Subdivision. Running nearly 200 miles between Colton, California and the Colorado River at Yuma, Arizona, the Yuma Subdivision is part of the former Southern Pacific's Sunset Route, which today is an important rail corridor for the UP. Built as the second Transcontinental Railroad in the late 19th century, these steel rails connect Southern California with Texas, Louisiana, and Mexico. This is where high-priority intermodal trains kick up the sand of the Sonoran Desert. Where monster land barges of overseas containers battle mountain grades through San Timoteo Canyon. Where heavy loads of lumber from the Pacific Northwest scale the top of Beaumont Hill and travel the lowest above-ground mainline railroad in the world at the Salton Sea. From shuffling through a busy urban setting to battling heavy mountain grades to sprinting across the wide, lonely desert, this is mainline railroading Southern California style. This is Union Pacific's Yuma Subdivision. An interesting fact about the Yuma Subdivision is that its western half was built right along the San Andreas Fault, over Beaumont Hill and San Gorgonio Pass, and down along the east side of the Salton Sea through Niland. That being said, the only rumbling we felt during our visit was from passing trains. We will begin at West Colton Yard from the popular railfan hangout at Pepper Avenue, giving us a great view of the east end of the yard. From there, we will head for Colton Crossing, where the UP now flies over BNSF's San Bernardino sub out of Los Angeles. East of Loma Linda, the main line enters San Timoteo Canyon and begins the 1.97% ruling grade up the west side of Beaumont Hill. The line is double-tracked with crossovers at Ordway and Hinda. The climb through San Gorgonio Pass reaches an apex at Apex, just east of Beaumont, for which the hill is named by railroaders and railfans alike. The elevation is around 2,600 feet at the summit, and as the railroad continues east, it begins a downhill run that will ultimately take it to more than 200 feet below sea level at the Salton Sea. The grade is a negative 1.9% through Banning and Robertson, decreasing to negative 2.12% at Cabazon, and West Palm Springs, easing up to negative 1.95% near Garnet, and gently decreasing further through Rimlawn and Myoma. At Indio, the grade drops below sea level for the first time at around negative 13 feet. A continuing downhill grade of around 0.4% brings trains through Coachella and Thermal before leveling out at Mecca. Just east of that siding, the grade dips to 204 feet below sea level and remains quite low through Mortmer and Ferrum, now called Salton by the UP. This is near the junction with the former Eagle Mountain Railroad, which is no more. The railroad continues again as a double-track main line along the eastern shore of the Salton Sea through Bertram, Ragosa, and Wister, where a 1% grade begins to take the railroad out of the Salton Sink, passing Niland, which is the junction with UP's Calexico Subdivision, which runs south to the Mexican border. East of Niland, the double-track railroad finally climbs back above sea level, continuing into the desert through Araz, Regina, Acolita, and Mesquite, a junction with the Mesquite landfill which is currently not in use. Continuing east, we are back to single-track with sidings, including Glamis and Clyde. Double-track begins again at Cactus and continues through Ogilby, Dunes, Araz, and Winter Haven before reaching the Colorado River at Yuma. It's just after sunrise on a warm spring morning in Southern California. An eastbound stack train departs for Yuma, Arizona on Track 2, while a westbound led by UP 7822 approaches on Track 1. This is the start of a busy day on the former Southern Pacific's Sunset Route. Our view is from Pepper Avenue, a popular train watching spot for rail fans as it flies over the eastern end of the yard. Looking east, mains 1 and 2 separate to accommodate a Y-track, which is a junction of the former Southern Pacific's Palmdale Cutoff, heading north through Cajon Pass, the Tehachapi Mountains, and up the San Joaquin Valley toward Roseville and the Pacific Northwest. SP used this route to bypass Los Angeles. A balloon track is located just this side of the junction, often used for turning road power to be added to trains. In the distance, the snow-covered San Gabriel Mountains set the backdrop for the scene. West Colton Yard was built by the Southern Pacific in 1972 to serve traffic from Los Angeles to the west, the San Joaquin route to the north, also known as the I-5 corridor, and the Sunset route, serving Texas and Louisiana to the east. Today, it's an important West Coast hub for the Union Pacific, which features a 64-track classification yard, with 14 departure tracks found here on the east end. The BNSF power indicates their presence as well. They operate a regular train between BNSF's major hub at Barstow, east of Cajon Pass, and Colton. The Barstow to West Colton train is nicknamed the Barwinkle. The rear of the eastbound clears the control point at Pepper, milepost 537.3 on the Alhambra Subdivision. A GATX car repair facility is located on the south side of the mains. Resting in the yard is GMTX 7000, what is called an MP14B genset. A long time ago, in a land far, far away, it began life as an EMD SW1200 switcher built for Canadian National as number 1367. UP 5653 West has a long manifest train for West Colton and enters the yard after making a nighttime run across the Yuma Sub. Behind the train was once Slover Mountain, which was mined for limestone in the 20th century and is no more. The mid-train DPUs are announced by the throaty exhaust of UP 5778 as it blasts under Pepper Avenue. A crew is shuttled out to the departure yard to put power on an eastbound train. As they go about their work, a switch job approaches with 3 engines that were once the most common form of road power found on any railroad. The classic SD40-2. In the lead is a 1797, built in July of 1976 as the UP 3310. Behind it is an older sibling of June 73 vintage, now the Y3201, and the oldest in the pack, by 2 months, the UP 3205, which was built in April of 73. Despite the electrical upgrades and designating them as SD40Ns, there is no mistaking the heartbeat of their 16-cylinder 645 E3 diesel prime movers. KCS 4748 in weathered Southern Belle paint leads a brace of power out of the diesel servicing facilities. This is the 25th day of March 2023, and the KCS is just a couple of weeks from being merged officially with the Canadian Pacific, creating the CPKC, the first and only single railway connecting Canada, the US, and Mexico. CPKC is short for Canadian Pacific Kansas City Limited. A long Z-train heads east on Main 1. In addition to the 4 units on the point, 2 more remote-controlled engines are placed over a mile back mid-train. Main 1 curves to the north, ducking under the Mojave Subdivision and meeting up again with Main 2 at Rancho, which is the beginning of the Yuma Sub. Just east of Rancho is the popular Colton Diamonds. The old crossing of the Southern Pacific and Santa Fe, where today the BNSF San Bernardino Subdivision from Los Angeles crosses the UP. Well, sort of. In August of 2013, UP completed construction of a flyover to alleviate the bottleneck created by the crossing of these two major rail arteries out of Los Angeles. Paralleling Interstate 10, the UP flyover is an impressive 8,150 feet long. UP 5298 East drags a manifest train 35 feet over the top of the busy BNSF main line. It was the Southern Pacific who built through here first in 1875, when the California Southern, a subsidiary of the ATSF, tried to put its own line across here 8 years later in 1883. Sparks flew between the two railroads. The California Southern obtained a court order allowing them to build, and the SP hired lawman and gunfighter Virgil Earp, the brother of Wyatt Earp, to put a stop to it, riding in the cab of a locomotive, gun drawn. In what was later dubbed the Battle of the Crossing on September 13, 1883, two mobs met for war. Armed citizens of Colton stood right here, backing Virgil Earp in the locomotive. On the other side stood the governor of California, Robert Waterman, along with the sheriff and well-armed posse of San Bernardino citizens who wanted to see the new railroad connect to their town. Virgil Earp realized the situation could end up bloodier than the famous gunfight at the OK Corral in Tombstone, Arizona territory, which was only a few years earlier. So he holstered his pistol. And to this day, competing railroads still cross at Colton. East of the historic crossing is the old SB Colton Yard, which still sees some light use. A rock train which runs between Cabazon and Gardena is tied down. It is called the Robertson rock train, and it makes a regular appearance on Beaumont Hill. UP 2643 West passes the old Colton Yard on the flyover on Main 1, the north track. The tracks in the foreground connect with West Colton, utilizing the remaining diamond, as well as the BNSF's San Bernardino Subdivision. Westbound containers led by CN 2853 pass the manifest on Main 2. A third train enters the scene. UP 6398 leads an autorack train off the BNSF San Bernardino Subdivision to head east for Yuma. It has been a busy day so far in Colton, but it's time to start heading east. The Yuma Subdivision leaves the urban landscape, setting a southeasterly course through San Timoteo Canyon, beginning the climb over Beaumont Hill. The ruling grade is 1.97% on the west side. A GE C6044AC number 7060 is on the point of an eastbound stack train as it digs in for the 20-mile climb to Beaumont on the number 1 track. The railroad passes through orange groves as it follows the winding course of San Timoteo Creek to Ordway. In spite of the encroaching development, these orchards have continued to survive in the fertile foothills of the San Jacinto Mountains under the care of fifth-generation farmers. The sweet-smelling orchards are a great setting for hard-working trains on Beaumont Hill, like UP 6621 East. Check out the third unit, a 4-axle GP60 number 2019. The radio display sign tells crews when to change channels as they cross from one dispatcher's territory to another. West of Ordway, the channel is 42, and star 50 tones up the dispatcher. East to Yuma, the channel is 96, which is displayed on the other side. A couple of old GE Warriors bring up the rear of this train, including UP 6454 and 6249. Getting above the orange groves, the San Gabriel Mountains rise above an eastbound Z train led by UP 8698, which makes the grade at a good clip. Right on its heels is the UP 7192 East, snaking its way up the canyon. Springtime in San Timoteo Canyon is a season of contrasts, with snow-capped mountain peaks rising behind lush hills of green. Another contrast can be made between the hot Z trains that sprint through the canyon and the long, heavy stack trains that crawl in their wake. One such being the UP 8522, leading 10,000 feet of containers near El Casco. A pair of mid-trains thunder up the 1.9% grade through the canyon. San Timoteo Canyon and the route over San Gorgonio Pass was discovered in 1853 by government geologist Dr. William Blake, who was mapping out a possible railroad line from the Gila River to the Pacific coast. In his enthusiasm, Blake declared it to be the true gateway from the interior to the Pacific Ocean, with an easy grade in open country. At that time, the preferred trade route was the old Spanish Trail north of here through Cajon Pass. The problem was what Blake called open country was a long, formidable stretch of desert on the east side. It wasn't until the completion of the first Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 that demand grew for a southern transcon, and this would be the route for the new Southern Pacific Railroad. A railroad grade was built through here toward the pass beginning in the summer of 1875, but was forced to halt in August when the temperature reached 120 degrees. On a pleasant spring evening, 148 years later, a westbound glides down grade with a pair of Norfolk Southern GEs on the point, while snow-covered San Gorgonio Mountain peaks over the north side of San Timoteo Canyon. Four big GEs led by UP 2705 lead an eastbound Z train through El Casco in the late afternoon. Continuing east through the canyon, the San Gabriel Mountains once again show off their white tops, while UP 8826 leads a morning Z upgrade. The Yuma Subdivision is mostly double-tracked, with crossovers like these at Hinda, milepost 557. UP 6348 is eastbound on Main 2. The next morning, we returned to Hinda in time to catch the UP 8232 heading into the sunrise near milepost 558. As the train continues toward the top of San Gorgonio Pass, the bulking mass of Mount San Jacinto looms in the distance. It will be visible for a good portion of our journey from here on out. Within a few minutes, we are surprised by the Robertson rock train that we first saw tied down at Colton. The train loads at the Robertson Rock Quarry 14 miles from here at Cabazon. The loaded train will head back west for Gardena, near Los Angeles. This may be the Southern Pacific sunset route, but we sure like the sunrises too. We are now just a couple of miles west of Beaumont. UP 5293 takes eastbound double stacks to the top. In the background, traffic can easily be seen on Interstate 60, just west of where it meets the 10 at Beaumont. Power for a local is tied down at Beaumont, just west of the summit. UP 2678 leads a relatively short Z train east. Trains reach the top of San Gorgonio Pass at an elevation of 2,500 feet and prepare for a 2.12% drop down the east side to Indio. UP 7634 East leads a manifest with several lumber loads from the Pacific Northwest. As the remote-controlled rear units pass, we can see the actual summit of Beaumont Hill, called Apex, just beyond the grade crossing in the distance. The familiar UP steep descending grade street signs mark the apex of the grade just east of Beaumont. UP 7636 West approaches apex as it passes our position, running 3x2. Two radio-controlled SD-70 Aces help this manifest get over the pass. UP also uses manned helpers on Beaumont Hill, mostly for westbound trains, and we will see them in action in the coming miles. Starting down the east side, UP 7490 West climbs through Robertson. The grade on the east side of San Gorgonio Pass starts gradually around 60 miles to the east near the Salton Sea at Mecca, increasing to 1% west of Indio and reaching a maximum of 2.12% between Cabazon and West Palm Springs, just a little farther down the hill. Here, the grade is still about 1.9%, and these remote-controlled units are working hard, shoving the train through the curve at milepost 571.2. Near mile marker 572, we find the Robertson Rock Quarry and loading facility found on the south side of Main 2 at Cabazon. On the railroad timetable, this is known as Robertson, CPSB 572, and this is where the rock train loads during the week. We get another look at the westbound with the Norfolk Southern Power on the point, as NS 4138 leads the stack train up San Gorgonio Pass. San Gorgonio Pass is a narrow gap between two mountain ranges where the climate changes from Mediterranean to desert. The result is one of the most consistently windy places in the U.S. Not surprisingly, wind turbines have existed here since the 1980s, long before the nationwide population explosion of wind farms commenced in the early 21st century. As of May 2022, over 1,200 turbines were installed at the San Gorgonio Pass wind farm between Cabazon and North Palm Springs. Dwarfed by numerous spinning blades, UP 6228 leads a westbound Z-train upgrade between West Palm Springs and Fingal. As the sign says, we have made it to Palm Springs, California. But before you start thinking of a lush oasis in the desert teeming with golf courses, swimming pools, and movie stars, you might want to look around. This is the Amtrak station of Palm Springs, but on the railroad timetable, it is called Garnet. At least now it is. Back in 1875, it was a Southern Pacific station named Palms. In 1889, it grew to 7 Palms. Palm Springs in 1900, then Pierce in 1906, Gray in 1917, Noria in 1918, and finally in 1923, it was changed yet again to Garnet. This unmanned station serves Amtrak's Sunset Limited, running thrice weekly between Los Angeles and New Orleans. That being said, you won't find many Amtrak passengers using the station. Frequent sandstorms leave large drifts around the station, and any vehicles parked here long enough that must be cleared constantly. Until a better solution is found, Garnet remains fairly quiet, except for the occasional rail fan. A helper set consisting of UP 7048 and 7978 run light toward Indio after assisting a westbound over Beaumont Hill. The next assignment for these engines is a stack train, which is waiting about 8 miles away at Rimlon. UP 8843 West leads a long stack train through Garnet on Main 1. The snow-covered San Gorgonio Mountains rise to the north. Two remote-controlled engines add their muscle mid-train. It is here the grade increases from 1% to 1.9%, and we can see its effect on the train's speed. A short local led by UP 6524 heads for Indio on the number 2 track. Our train with the helpers finally arrives as UP 8252 ducks under North Indian Canyon Drive, coming out of a long corridor of tamarisk trees. UP 7242 is a lone engine working mid-train. It is probably for this reason that helpers were called to help this train over Beaumont. Helper 7978 and the 7048 lean onto the rear drawbar, making sure these steel wheels keep rolling westward. East of Garnet, trains run through a long corridor of tamarisk trees which protect the railroad from drifting desert sand. The mostly tangent track parallels Interstate 10 all the way to Indio. Located at milepost 610.9, Indio is like an oasis in the Coachella Valley region of Southern California's Colorado Desert. It was called Indian Wells when the Southern Pacific arrived here in 1876. It became an important water stop for steam engines, halfway between Yuma and Los Angeles. Since there were many other locations with the name Indian Wells, the town was eventually renamed Indio, which is a Spanish word for Indian. We are standing opposite the old yard office, engine house, and machine shops once located inside a Y-track on the north side of the mains. Today it serves as a lumber yard for a customer of the railroad. Looking west, a stack train has stopped to let off a crew member and meets a westbound Z, getting a good run at the mountain grade ahead. UP 8917 continues eastward with a long train of 40-foot marine containers out of Long Beach. The bright colors of bougainvillea really stand out in this desert town, which is 13 feet below sea level. It is not uncommon for summertime temperatures to hover around 120 degrees Fahrenheit, with an official record high set in 1905 at 125. Although others have recorded a blistering 135 degrees around the same time period. During our visit in March of 2023, it was a comfortable 80 as helpers sprint through Indio after shoving the stack train over the apex at Beaumont. The crew didn't stop at Indio, but continued another 5 miles east to the crossovers at Coachella. Control point CPSP 615. The next westbound they will assist is still a couple hours away, so the crew sits tight in between switches on Main 2. A flared SD-70M number 4868 leads a westbound manifest past the waiting helpers on Main 1. Next, UP 7902 East crosses over from Main 2 to Main 1 at Coachella. Coachella is named for the Coachella Valley, which extends from San Gorgonio Pass to the Salton Sea. It is bordered by the San Bernardino and Little San Bernardino Mountains on the northeast, and the San Jacinto and Santa Rosa Mountains to the west. Irrigation has turned this arid rift valley into a fertile and productive agricultural area, with over 100,000 acres of rich farmland. A truly wide variety of fruits and vegetables are grown in the Coachella Valley, from lemons, oranges, and grapefruit to cabbage, carrots, and cotton. And that list barely scratches the surface. The valley is the northernmost part of the Salton Trough, which includes the Salton Sea and Imperial Valley, extending south to the Gulf of California in Mexico. The trough takes the railroad below sea level for over 60 miles from Indio to a point east of Niland. Mecca has the distinction of having the lowest elevation traversed by a mainline railroad in North America. The actual lowest point of negative 204 feet is said to be just east of our location. Between Thermal and Salton, the Yuma Subdivision is a single-track mainline with sidings like this one at Mecca. UP 7514 leads a Z train eastward through what is known as America's Basement. Groves of citrus and date palms make a patch quilt extending toward the blue waters of the Salton Sea. Here, the railroad parallels Highway 111, better known as Grapefruit Boulevard. Another Norfolk Southern engine has found itself on the point of a westbound land barge of marine containers between the sidings of Mortmer and Mecca. In the distance, the barren features of the Oricopia Mountains stand in stark contrast to the valley floor. Between 1969 and 1972, many Apollo astronauts trained there in preparation for landing on the moon, starting with the Apollo 13 crew. Appearing lifeless and empty, the Oricopias do resemble the lunar surface. Lifeless, empty, and void were how those who built the Southern Pacific Line described the landscape. The area was first surveyed in 1857 by Edward Fitzgerald Beale, whose party used camels to cross the desert. We can't help but wonder what those surveyors would have thought if they could see the groves of date palms and vineyards the railroad now runs through. UP 8387 takes more double stacks west. A track geometry train catches us by surprise west of Mortmer. Another surprise, or sidetrack, is this work of art found along the road. At 235 feet below sea level, the Salton Sea lies in a basin of what was once part of the Gulf of California, now cut off by a delta plain created by the Colorado River. It is a landlocked body of water currently measuring about 35 miles long and 15 miles wide. When Southern Pacific built through here in 1876, it was just a dry sink in an inhospitable part of the world. Recorded history shows that it had been so for the previous 3 centuries. Today, the Southern Pacific's original grade is out there, under the salty waves. A series of floods from the Colorado River starting in the spring of 1905 changed all of that. To tap the agricultural potential of the Imperial Valley, over 700 miles of irrigation canals were built from the Colorado River. Farms began to flourish in this new setting akin to the Nile River in Egypt. The main issue was the amount of silt carried by the Colorado, which blocked the canal intake near Yuma, shutting off water to all farms and ranches. A quick fix was a breach in the river south of the border, which allowed the water to flow again. What was overlooked was the tendency of the Colorado and the Gila rivers to flood, and in the spring of 1905, they did so, with a vengeance. The entire flow of the Colorado River was diverted into the Salton Basin due to its extremely low elevation. The result can still be seen today. Several attempts were made to stop the water over the next few years, and it was Southern Pacific's Edward Harriman, the famous railroad tycoon, who took it upon himself to fix the break in the levee at the cost of millions of dollars to his company. By 1907, he succeeded, saving the Imperial Valley. In 1911, U.S. President William Howard Taft asked Congress to compensate the Southern Pacific for their effort, but the company never received a dime. Shortly before his death, Harriman visited the Imperial Valley and was asked by a reporter if he regretted the large expenditure, having not been reimbursed by the U.S. government. Harriman simply replied, "No, this valley was worth saving, wasn't it?" Now over 100 years later, the rich Imperial Valley remains, while the Salton Sea has faded like a mirage in the desert, only to return again to what we see today. And efforts are being made to save it. The railroad was eventually realigned around the east side of the Salton Sea between Mecca and Niland. That is why we can see trains like the UP 5830 East running through Mortmer on a much higher elevation of 200 feet, below sea level. Another piece of railroad history along the Salton Sea is the Eagle Mountain Railroad, which once ran for 52 miles to a Geyser Steel Mill Company ore mine. The line was constructed between 1947 and 1948, and ore trains ran until 1986, after the closure of the mine. The tracks remained dormant for quite some time, and occasionally they were used for Hollywood movies, such as The Professionals in 1966, and Tough Guys in 1986, featuring SP Daylight number 4449. Today, the rails are gone and the ties have recently been pulled up. One remaining structure is this old maintenance of way shed, located just uphill from the former junction with the SP main line at Farron. The shed is made out of ties and rail and appears to have been used for storing high rail equipment. Some of the rail inside the structure shows a manufacture date of 1970, making this a fairly late structure in the railroad's history. The Eagle Mountain Railroad is just a memory, but you can still walk where the trains once ran, and from its grade, watch as steel wheels continue to polish the old SP main line. The line is now double-tracked from here to Mesquite, 60 miles to the east near Glamis. With the San Gorgonio Mountains towering in the background, UP 7490 sprints eastward toward Yuma. As the train approaches Bertram, it crosses Salt Creek on a trestle that still proudly bears the name of the Southern Pacific. A clear shows on Main 1 and a red for Main 2. There is a westbound approaching fast. The signal bridge is for control point CPSB 648, the old siding of Bertram on the south side of the double-track main. At the time of our visit in March of 2023, a strong storm system was pounding Southern California with heavy rain and snow in the mountains. Looking northwest, San Gorgonio Pass remains shrouded in thick clouds. Down here along the Salton Sea, precipitation is rare. On average, there are 13 days per year of measurable precipitation, bringing an annual total of 3 inches of rain to the Colorado Desert region. UP 7250 West heads through Bertram on Main 1. A few minutes later, UP 5792 leads a stack train west on Main 2. Since leaving West Colton, the railroad has generally followed a famous geological feature, namely the San Andreas Fault. Depending on which map you look at, the southern portion of the fault ends in this general vicinity, along the eastern shore of the Salton Sea. In addition to earthquakes, numerous hot springs can be found along this active geological area, including one big mud pot that is on the move. A green signal at mile marker 663.6 beckons an eastbound through Wister on the number 1 track. Watch carefully as the train slowly wiggles through an interesting phenomenon that has disrupted the railroad along with nearby California Highway 111. The giant mud pot was first discovered in 1953 and since then has moved across the Imperial Valley and under the UP tracks here at Wister, forcing Uncle Pete to move their main line around the pot. We call it the Wister Wiggle, performed today by UP 7353 East. Trains roll through Wister at over 200 feet below sea level, but soon will begin climbing out of the sink. The grade will increase to 0.55% and then a full 1% near Niland, the next station to the east. The snow-capped San Jacinto Mountains still command the scene at Niland, milepost 667.8 on the Yuma Subdivision. This is a junction with the UP Calexico line, which heads to the Mexican border at Calexico, around 41 miles to the south. An old maintenance of way base is located on the north side of the junction, while on the south are what is left of the RV Oasis Park, most of which was destroyed by fire a few years ago. The name Niland is a play on the words Nile land, referring to the fertility of the area, although the town itself does not appear so to those passing through. The population is said to be around 500. Looking down the Calexico subdivision, a stack train has just come from the border and will be tied down just south of Niland Junction. This is looking east toward Yuma. The clear signal on Main 1 is for the UP 6040, which leads a stack train up the 1% climb out of the Salton Sink. 5 units are on the point of an eastbound manifest led by UP 6621, an AC 44CW built for UP in 1997. A sixth engine, number 2681, adds a little push through Niland. UP 2650 West leads another train of domestic stacks and trailers for the West Coast. Upon leaving Niland, the Yuma Subdivision follows a southeast heading away from the fertile Imperial Valley into a sandy desert region bordered by the Chocolate Mountains. Thick stands of tamarisk trees protect the right-of-way from the constantly drifting sand. First planted by the Southern Pacific in 1959, the trees thrive in the hot, sandy, and alkali soil, yet need a lot of water to survive, and thus must be irrigated by the railroad. Our climb out of Niland has netted us an elevation of nearly 300 feet above sea level at Regina, as UP 7280 leads a short stack train west. Before this section of double track was completed by the Union Pacific, Regina was an 8,472-foot siding. A pond near the west switch served for irrigation of tamarisk trees, and supposedly a swimming hole for train crews who wanted to cool down while waiting in the siding. Keep in mind that summer temperatures are well above the 100-degree mark here. During our visit in late March, the temperature was mild in the mid-70s, but a sandstorm was brewing, so we took advantage of the tamarisk trees to catch a few more trains, like the UP 5584 East. We found train crews along the Sunset route to be quite friendly to rail fans. The conductor of this train even tried to give us some free toilet paper. Unfortunately, he missed and TP'd his own train. Oh well, better luck next time. The distant headlight is the UP 3078 West, closing fast. Track speed is 79 for passengers and 65 for most freight, depending on the makeup of the train. Two remote-controlled GEs are on the rear of this train. Trains and sandstorms aside, the desert has an appearance of a quiet, lonely place, rich in open spaces and solitude. But looks can be deceiving. What you see out there is the Chocolate Mountain Bombing Range, a military training area that, as you can imagine, is off-limits to the public. If you're into military aircraft, you'll have some nice distractions in between trains along this route, like this pair of Bell AH-1Z Vipers, which are following the main line west. As it turned out, the Vipers were head-to-head with the UP 6755 East, which gives them a little whistle, alerting us to their presence on this windy afternoon. At milepost 696.8, we find the current end of double track at Mesquite. The north track splits away from the main line on a 4.5-mile spur leading to the Mesquite Regional Landfill. The track was completed by Union Pacific in 2011 to handle solid waste from Los Angeles County. At the time, a projected 20,000 tons of waste per day was expected to be shipped here by train. So far, that has not happened. The landfill is also near one of the largest gold mines in the U.S., which dates back to 1876. Yep, there is gold in them there hills. And a hot rail at milepost 697 as UP 2643 takes a stack train east through the desert. The main line continues a southeast heading toward Yuma, running along the eastern edge of the Imperial sand dunes. Extending for more than 40 miles in length and averaging 5 miles wide, they are the largest mass of sand dunes in California. Back on single track, UP 8960 has just passed the siding of Glamis, leading an extra long Z train on its eastbound trek across the desert. A pair of EMDs are cut in behind a string of UPS and Walmart trailers. East of Glamis is the 8,500-foot siding of Clyde. Between here and Cactus, trains enjoy fairly level running before dropping down to meet the Colorado River at Yuma. A Tier 4 SD-70 Ace number 3025 leads a westbound Z through Clyde. Departing Glamis, the Ted Kiff Road parallels the tracks to Ogilvie, while this maintenance of way road hugs the right-of-way. Both roads are maintained, although drifting sand is always a hazard. UP 7853 East heads between Clyde and Cactus. California's Colorado Desert region covers around 7 million acres, including the Salton Sea. It is part of the larger Sonoran Desert that extends into southwest Arizona and Mexico. The desert is known for the majestic Saguaro cactus, which you can find in abundance in Arizona. Our vision for the sighting of cactus on the Yuma Sub was that of trains rolling through a forest of saguaro with their giant arms stretched to the sky. But that cactus doesn't grow in this area, so we had to settle for this scene instead. This is UP 8183 West. The clouds give off a yellow tint, reflecting the bright sand dunes beyond. The sighting of Cactus must get its name from nearby Ocotillo, whose bright flowers provide some contrast to the otherwise bleak surroundings. UP 8793 West passes the 8,422-foot sighting. UP 8095 East sprints through Cactus with an appropriate heritage engine that totally caught us by surprise. UP 1996 is tucked in behind the leader, proudly wearing its Southern Pacific Daylight-inspired colors. The railroad continues its southeastern tangent through the old stations of Oglebay and Dunes, nearing the Mexican border. Near Araz, the railroad crosses the All-American Canal. This canal is the Imperial Valley's only water source and channels water from the Colorado River at the Imperial Dam northeast of Yuma. The building of the canal was authorized along with the Hoover Dam project during the Great Depression in the 1930s. After leaving Cactus, the railroad has enjoyed a gentle downhill grade of around 1%, which levels out near Winter Haven. Arid desert transitions again into the lush farmland of the Colorado River Valley, in the final miles before reaching Yuma. The St. Thomas Yuma Indian Mission stands as a landmark above control point CPSP 732. Station sign Yuma, although our timetables called it Colorado, with Station Yuma being 1 mile east across the river. Of course, other names have changed recently with all the double tracking on the Sunset route. UP 7280 East approaches Yuma. An interesting note is the old inspection station on the right, once operated by the California Department of Agriculture. In 1540, 80 years before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, Spanish explorer Hernando del Alarcón found this narrow crossing of the Colorado River. The crossing would become an important focal point for traveling to the west, from the 1840s gold rush to the arrival of the Southern Pacific in 1877, and finally, the building of the ocean-to-ocean highway bridge in 1915. The original railroad crossing was to the west of the current bridge, but was removed during a line relocation in 1927, which effectively moved the railroad out of the center of town. Southern Pacific Extra number 2521 sits on static display on the former alignment on the Arizona side of the river. From this angle, the former crossing would have been just beyond the Interstate 8 bridge in the distance, 1,200 feet downstream from the current bridge. UP 5568 East crosses from California into Arizona. This train has come over 194 miles since leaving West Colton, tackling the grade of Beaumont Hill, down through the Salton Sea, and across the Colorado Desert. This is the eastern end of UP's Los Angeles Division, as well as the Yuma Sub. The next leg of the journey takes us over the Gila Subdivision to Tucson, but we will save that for next time. In the meantime, we hope you've enjoyed this look at the former Southern Pacific Line through Southern California that continues to serve as a vital link for the UP. As always, until next time, thanks for watching.